Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Writers and Fighters. I'm your host, AJ Ortega, and as you know, each and every week, I interview an author, somebody who writes, or I interview somebody involved in combat sports. Today I have Dylan Dunbar, a former independent pro wrestler who now owns and runs the San Antonio promotion Heavy Metal Wrestling. Me and Dylan know a lot of the same people, but we've never worked together, in his capacity as a promoter and mine as a referee. So it was good to finally talk to him and confirm my suspicions that he is a cool-ass dude. We talk about his time watching wrestling with his family, his eventual training, the transition into promoting, the effects of COVID on the independent wrestling scene, and how he specifically is trying to provide a new, progressive approach to the indie wrestling business. And it's a good talk, and he's a good guy. And you can support Heavy Metal Wrestling at heavymetalwrestling.com and find all their links to social media there. But before we get to that interview, I got to recap really quickly the boxing fight over the weekend. Saul Canelo Alvarez, pound for pound best fighter, arguably. Not really a good argument if you argue against it. He's the best active boxer in most people's perceptions. And again, he's a super big Mexican star, so it's really cool for Mexicans and Mexican Americans and Latinos at large, because he went on record last week or week before doing interviews and promos for this. But he said, yeah, I'm Mexican and happy and all this stuff to represent my country, but I represent all Latinos because, Latino households in general are fight fans. And so it's always news when there's a big Mexican fight. And so Canelo took on Avni Yildirim, and it was on that DAZN channel. Super middleweight, 168. And Canelo's trying to unify the titles there. I guess it's, WBC, WBA, and then the next fight coming up will be the WBO. And there's another one. The point is there's too many belts and he's trying to unify them. Anyhow, and so he looked great. Too good. He looked too good in comparison to Yildirim, who was not aggressive, not accurate, relied on counterpunching, and not a lot of it. Canelo's jab was getting through the guard pretty consistently, but one of the things I saw that I really liked was that he showed this slicing uppercut that found its mark several times, and Yildirim was taking a beating. He was, but that uppercut was really impressive to me. And Canelo's so fast and so strong. It was impressing me more than the left hook that he's known for, and a lot of Mexican fighters are known for. And that left hook was there all day, but that uppercut was snappy and different than the Tyson uppercut, right? Short, compact inside because of that body and weight difference. But Canelo, he had a little bit more space in the range, not completely inside, but he's fast enough to shoot that left uppercut from the hip, giving him more torque on it. Really impressive, real snappy. And that left to the body, it was there, but he was utilizing a whole lot of other techniques. And he did land that body shot a handful of times and certainly did damage. He was also going up top with it, and Avni blocked most of it. But I think that blocking those shots up top, protecting his head and catching it on the glove, showed him the power that Canelo has, that even if you block it, he's knocking you around. But yeah, Avni Yildirim had really no offense. And he went down in the third. He goes down from a simple but real powerful 1-2 with the right, straight right through the guard, putting him on his ass. And he gets up and laughs it off, which is stupid. And And he covered up enough and threw one counter left to keep the ref from stopping it. And he escapes that round. And when he's sitting on the stool, his trainer says he's going to give him one more round, but if he doesn't show him something, he's going to stop it. And the ref and the ring doc come over and say something similar, I believe. And I thought he would go out and maybe last another 30 to 60 seconds. But no, somebody else in his corner said to stop the fight. And so they didn't let him off the stool. And so I agree with that. I agree. That's why you have, multiple people in your corner there. And you have to protect your fighter. He wasn't doing well, and he wasn't going to win. And so why put him out there for even another 30 seconds of punishment? So I don't disagree with that choice. You got to protect your fighter. But to the point of him having no offense, like I estimated in those 3 rounds that he landed a dozen shots, 12. And then this morning I looked at the CompuBox numbers and he landed 11. Canelo landed 67 punches. And 58 of those were power punches. And so ultimately, the math doesn't lie, right? He was just extremely accurate, and Yildirim had nothing. And so there's like a lot of criticism, or maybe not a lot of criticism, some criticism of Canelo fighting like bums and stuff like that. And Yildirim, to be fair, is not a superstar. He just isn't. The fight was not spectacular. It was lopsided. It just showed somebody that's at a different level, and it wasn't competitive. But Canelo's trying to collect these belts and unify super middleweight, and he intends to fight 4 times this year. And so not every fight is going to be Miguel Cotto, a Floyd Mayweather, Gennady Golovkin. That's like not sustainable, right? And so he gets another win. He completes a mandatory title defense, gets another KO on his record, and life goes on. But it was good to see, good to see him active and good to see him sharp, slightly heavier, but just as fast, just as powerful. So it was a good showing for him. And Yildirim got a little beat up, not as much as he potentially could have got beat up, but he got a paycheck too. And so, life will go on for him as well. All right, y'all. So let's get to this interview with Dylan Dunbar. Oh, and we were talking for like 15 minutes and having a great time when I realized, as a Jabroni podcast host, that I had not pressed the big glowing button on my mixer that says record. So we had to start over, but it came out a little bit more crispy on take 2. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview, because I sure did. All right. Yeah, I'm sitting here with Dylan Dunbar. We had a little bit of technical difficulty. We had a solid conversation for about 10 minutes, but we're going to try to backtrack a little bit.
No worries. It's going to be good, man. No, I've been looking forward to this interview for a while, like I said, man. So if we got to do it twice, that's cool with me, man.
That's the nature of and as a promoter, these DIY operations and the hiccups that hiccups that can come from it.
You are preaching to the choir with that, AJ, man. Let me tell you, bro. Like, it is one of those things, man. I'm very familiar with the DIY kind of setups and all the roadblocks that we'll run into, man. It happens, man. That's what heavy metal wrestling was founded on, and that's what Dylan Dunbar was founded on, man.
Oh, I love it. Okay, and so Dylan Dunbar is the promoter of and creator, the mastermind.
Dude, there's so many hats that I wear in this company. I need to find a catch-all trade. I am just the dude at heavy metal, basically, for heavy metal wrestling, and based in San Antonio and South Texas. I do so much for this company, and I love it.
And so I've observed you from afar because we know a lot of the same people. I've refereed a little bit there in Central Texas. Always been, trying to be connected with the indie wrestling scene in there in Central and South Texas. And so your name was always one of those that was always around. We're buddies online. Worked with a lot of the same people. And so we'll get to the promoter stuff. And then before that, you were a wrestler yourself. But you're a San Antonio guy. Are you a San Antonio, Texas guy, like just a native from there?
Yeah,
And tell me a little bit about what San Antonio means to you.
San Antonio is pumping through these veins here, man. I mean, it's born, raised, bred here, man. Been here for just about every single Spurs championship win too. It's always been very important to me, this city. I mean, there's never been really a time that I've moved away from here. There was times that I was looking at possibly moving away, but everything just kind of fell into place where I was able to stay in my hometown. Obviously I've moved around in all different parts of this city, man. I love it through and through, man. San Antonio is to me the best city in the world. I'm so glad that I live here and that I'm able to pop up shop with heavy metal wrestling here and basically call it our home base.
It's a good city, man. I'm living in Utah, but I'm a Texas guy, born in Houston, raised in El Paso, lived everywhere, kind of like you, right? But my sister currently lives in San Antonio. Spent some time in Austin, grad school in San Marcos, so all that stuff is. And San Antonio grew on me. San Antonio is one of those cities where I don't know, and I was living in Austin. And if there's anything that's going to make you appreciate San Antonio, it's living in Austin. And I just and it was when the boom started happening several years ago and all that kind of stuff, and just got an appreciation for San Antonio. Then also I had friends and whatnot, you show you the good spots and everything, right. And just seeing how it changed and evolves, and there's everything you need there in San Antonio. It is a beautiful city. It's
man. I mean, I found everything I wanted here. When I finished high school, I was looking at that was really one of two times that I was kind of looking outside of San Antonio and just kind of seeing all right, man, I'm looking at universities, applying at different universities. I mean, I got accepted at as far away as fucking places in Hawaii, small university in Hawaii. I got accepted at a joint in New Hampshire, so it was one of those, I was an angsty teenager where I was just I'm getting the fuck out of San Antonio. I hate it here. You
put me on that plane to Hawaii. Yeah.
Man. Get me as far away from here as possible. But then it just kind of, I realized through some life changes and growing up and maturing just a little bit, that, hey man, I love this city. It's always done right by me and it's always been good for me. So it was pretty easy for me to enroll at that point at the UT Health Science Center here in San Antonio. And I started going to school to become a paramedic. And while I was going to school, I was working on an ambulance as an EMT, which is very low ranking, I guess, on that spectrum. It wasn't a good time, honestly. And that's how, I'm talking about, holding guys' severed limbs and shit like that for $10, $11 an hour. It's rough, man. At that point, I was
criminal is what it is.
Yeah,
criminal.
It is, man. It's criminally underpaid. I felt it was just fuck, man. I can go do tech support. It was one of those moments that I was like, shit, man. I've been working at this. I've been going to school for this. I kind of committed to this, and now I'm gonna bail on it because the money's not there and it's not for me. Mentally, it's just not for me. I'm not gonna lie, I had some issues, man. You see some crazy shit, you have some nightmares about things, and then I'm waking up in a cold sweat going, oh shit, I saw all that stuff I only made enough to get a fucking Whataburger meal today,
Yeah.
It's just hey man, that's
yeah, even if you're not squeamish or have a sensitive kind of predilection to that kind of stuff, but you're seeing it up close. You're not a stylized version that we see on TV, or even with the protection of the screen. Even if you see something real and fucked up on the screen, there's the safety of the screen. No, you're there.
Right.
The guy's looking at, he's passing out. He's done. He's dead, or whatever fucked up shit that you see. You have to carry some of that with you. And for $10, $12 an hour, hell no.
Yeah. It's a little easier to make that trade-off when it's hey man, you're making $20, $25, $30 an hour. It's okay, yeah, all right, fair enough. I got a decent paying job, but fair enough. I can live with that, and live with, I guess, some of the trauma that you take away with the job. But at some point, it's just kind of hey man, when you start looking at the job market here in San Antonio and you go, fuck man, I can make more at every call center here in San Antonio. It's just a no-brainer at that point. So I hopped out of the medical field, man, and I worked at a bunch of call centers, but soon realized man, this shit isn't fulfilling to me. I'm not just trying to get by and just live in some shitty apartment and work to live. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. So I kind of kept circling back to this idea of pro wrestling, man. I don't know why. It just was something that kind of stuck in the back of my head because, I mean, it's one of those things, man. It was always been in my family. All of my friends grew out of it at a certain point, but I was the one dude that just stayed with it, loved it. Like, I was obsessed with it, you know?
When you say,
and it was one of those things.
when you say it was in your family, you mean you guys go to shows together, or what does that mean? Like that you guys were into
it? Was deep. It was deep, AJ. Like, let me tell you, man, my grandfather, I never had the opportunity to meet him because unfortunately he passed before I was born. But from all the stories and things like that I've heard from him, about him, I should say, he would travel and go to like the Sportatorium in Dallas and check out the Von Erichs. He would check out Southwest here in San Antonio. He'd go to all the old classic like 80s wrestling shows, 90s wrestling shows. And he would, or I'm sorry, late 70s, early 80s, or that era of these shows, man. And my grandfather was actually hearing impaired. He was deaf. It was a unique thing for him, I think, because he was able to go to, I guess, like a public outing and was not necessarily any different than anybody else. The reactions and the that he would have from wrestling was no different than the person sitting next to him that could hear 100% clearly, you know? And I think pro wrestling kind of lends itself to the deaf community in a very different way than any other medium out there, you know? I mean, you know, it's a lot different for my grandfather to be able to go to a movie and check out a theater and not really understand what the hell's going on. But I mean, you know, if he goes to a live wrestling show and, you know, he's able to pick it up and like, oh man, I don't need to hear what's happening. I can see and I can feel the energy, the electricity, the movement in a crowd. And it's just something that I think started, it's got to be in my genes, man. Because I mean, you know, my grandfather had that happening and he would take my father. It was a way for them, I think, to kind of bond over wrestling. You know, they'd watch Old Southwest. They go check it out here in San Antonio. And it was one of those things that I think, like, you know, my father and maybe my grandfather didn't have a whole lot in common. I know that they both like to fish a lot. But again, that's one of those things you don't necessarily need audio to be able to enjoy. Obviously, you know, less is more with that.
Yeah, fishing, you know? Yeah, fishing is about quiet, really. Yeah, it's me and my dad could hear 100%, but we didn't say shit to each other when we were fishing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was one of those things that I think, you know, wrestling kind of gave them a unique thing to be able to bond over. And then honestly, man, like it was just something that me and my dad bonded over. You know, I think it was. I can remember, honestly. I know one of the very first memories I have is watching wrestling. Like that in general, and it's very vague and like fuzzy in my head, but I can remember being like 2 or 3 years old, man, and watching wrestling with my dad, you know, like I can, it's always been around me.
I think, you bring up a lot of great points, and that recent one there with the memory of wrestling. Again, it's just imprinted in your life because you're like, I have this fuzzy memory. It's like one of the first things I remember. Is a wrestling moment, and I have that. Like I've actually written about it and want to continue this piece about. I was born in '83, so in '86 is when Hogan body slams Andre.
Right.
I remember that. Or I've convinced myself I remember that. And again, it goes back to what the idea of your grandfather being deaf. And I don't remember I remember the visual, right? I remember the visual of Hogan picking up Andre, and because it's you see the whole story in one move, in that it's the David versus Goliath kind of thing, right? And so your grandfather is able to attend wrestling events, which are again built in this very visually intuitive thing. In that people that maybe are blind, well, music lends itself to people that are blind because they can hear, right? And so in this inverse kind of way or opposite kind of way, you can see this with the exception of like promos and stuff. But even then, if you see the guy snarl on his face when he's yelling into the microphone, you're like, maybe that's a bad guy, right?
Yeah, maybe the guy's pissed off about something.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like, that's something that visual is so important to me. And I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but even as like a promoter and how we do things, you know, because like it's important to me with knowing that my grandfather was kind of not necessarily, I guess you could say, able to kind of experience all of pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. I like to enhance the visuals. It's important to me that people know exactly what this character is or who this person is and what their motivation is the second that they come through that curtain. because I want anybody, regardless of, their hearing or whatnot, or their age or anything, any restrictions, I guess you could say, to enjoying a full experience of what pro wrestling could be. I want everyone to be able to have that same experience. And the easiest way to convey that is that moment that you walk through that curtain, who you are, what you're wearing, what's on, what your expression is. And, there's so much that goes into it. And it's honestly I was just so, like I said, at a young age, man, I can remember being like, my memory is I'm 3 years old and I can somehow remember like seeing Yokozuna. And I just remembered being like, that's a big fucking guy. Yeah, like as a little kid, right. Like as a 2 or 3 year old, I genuinely can remember it because I can, in my head, I can picture like the apartment that my parents lived in, and they've helped me piece the fucking timeline together, So it's one of those things. I was born in 91. So we're talking like early 93, 94-ish, around that area. And it's one of those like things, man. It's just, like you said, it's imprinted on me. And when I had like this kind of existential crisis where I'm going, okay, shit, man, what am I going to do with my life? That imprint is just there, man. I feel it, and it keeps coming back to it. It's just like, fuck, man, I want to do something with it. I didn't know if I was going to be able to wrestle because I was just some big fat guy that used to play football, 6'4", 300 pounds, like some big fat dude that just kind of like let himself go after playing high school ball and just like going to school and eating like, McDonald's every day and shit like that. It's just not good because I didn't have really any goals, just going to school,
And so I guess I want to hear about, again, that leap from, okay, I do have this athletic background from like football, like Texas football. And you say, okay, well, I'm a big boy. And not a bad thing at a certain regard, right? In a certain regard, in terms of the pro wrestling world.
Yeah, a lot of times it's that they kind of look for that size, but unlucky for me, man, it wasn't a lot of muscle. It was just a lot of barbecue and fucking a lot of Mexican food, a lot of enchiladas, a lot of that, man. That's where my strength really came from, which is kind of fat guy strength. Had that extra spare tire and whatnot. So, man, I jumped into, I decided, hey, I'm going to look into pro wrestling schools, right? I'm not looking to do this EMT shit any longer. Looking at pro wrestling schools, and that, again, very similar situation where I'm like, okay, I'm looking outwards, man. I'm looking at the Dudley Boys School in Florida. I'm looking at Ricky Morton in Tennessee. I'm looking at Booker T in Houston. Then all of a sudden, man, I start seeing like online that Funaki Dojo is opening here in San Antonio, and I'm like, what are the odds that a credible trainer is starting a fucking wrestling school in my hometown? Like the month that I'm having this fucking existential crisis, I'm like, what's going on with my life? So, man, I'm not a very spiritual person or anything like that, man, but I had to kind of take it as like, this is a sign, like, there's got to be a sign.
I take that, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's got to be a sign, man. So I jumped head first, man, and actually ended up being the second student at the dojo. And for a while, it was just me and Great Scott, who's known as Scotty Santiago, is like as the two trainees there, man. And we lived, we breathed, and we slept pro wrestling, man. That's all we did, bro. That was it, man. It consumed us, bro. We would find shitty jobs online that fit around our schedule just to make ends meet, so we could train 2, sometimes 3 times a day with Funaki at our training center. It was all encompassing, man. It was all we did, and I was man. Those days I look back on them fondly. I mean, I think everybody does when they first break into wrestling, but, I never worked harder for anything in my life than when I was working at Funaki Dojo, man.
And so the dojo, and so I know Funaki's work and his credibility in terms of training. Again, just heard it forever, especially in Texas there. But maybe you tell the audience, like, Funaki as a trainer and early training stuff.
Right.
And so tell me a bit about the dojo.
Dude, let me tell you, man, I walked into the dojo and I was 6'4", a little over, I think 310 in that area, like 310 pounds, man. Like I said, big guy, man. Had no clue what I was getting myself into. The training with Funaki was so intense that in the course of about a year and a half, man, I dropped down to around 220, 230, I think was the lowest that we had gotten at, man. Looking at over 100 pounds that I was dropping at some points, because that weight would fluctuate so much just based off of, honestly, like the weather. The seasons, man. I mean, if we were summer and we were training in essentially what was a garage. It was a gym, but it was like a converted auto garage into a gym, and it was just like there was no ventilation really. There was no air. Obviously, we had some fans, like some like blowing, man, but they were
Like an
doing
old school
nothing.
gym, like an old school
Yeah,
gym.
the
Not
old school
not
gym, man.
not that like you walk into like the UFC branded gyms or something,
Yes,
right? Where it's
exactly. Yeah,
like
nothing
new
like that.
equipment and nice
Like,
mats on the ground, and no,
yeah,
it's
nothing
a
like what,
rusty garage door, and it is hot or cold, and we're just working.
dude. Exactly, nothing like the current heavy metal training center we have right now, man. But it is 100% different. And it was like training in a sauna, man. I would take when these training sessions with Funaki, man, we would take, I would say about an hour and a half to 2 hours to train each session. And I would show up and I would have the shirt I was wearing, and then I would have two other shirts to change into during that 2 hour training session, because I would just sweat through them, man. And Funaki was like, "Hey, it's kind of dangerous that you're that sweaty right now, so like change your shirt so you can keep wrestling." I was like, "Okay." So it was intense, man. But honestly, those were like the formative years for what we did. I mean, I was training with Scotty, who's a fucking freak athlete still to this day, man. I mean, the guy's dieting is on point. The dude takes so much care for his body and knows what he's putting into himself. And dude, he works so hard in the gym. The dude was a personal trainer at Gold when we started training. The guy is a fucking doing like parkour and free running and shit like that. Just so athletic. And here I am, just this fat bumbling guy that just wolfed down some Whataburger a few minutes ago and is like, "All right, let's wrestle." And I was outclassed, man. But it was one of those things that every day was just a little bit of progress, a little bit of progress, a little more, until a year and a half goes by, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm a halfway competent wrestler, and I'm ready to fucking have my real first match. Because I mean, dude, between you and me, AJ, I made the executive decision, and Funaki chastised me, but 3 months into training, man, I decide that my one of my home companies at the time, they're at Fun Fest, which was like a 3-day music festival in Austin, man, with all these badass bands and all these vendors.
It's a big event. It's a big event.
It's like ACL, man. I wanted to go.
Event, for sure. It's a big event.
So they say, "Hey, man, if you wrestle, we'll give you fucking 3-day tickets. We'll give you like you and one person. We'll give you
weekend
tickets for it."
pass.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Yo, okay, fuck yeah, dude, I'm down. I'm so down. I'm not ready to wrestle, but I'm so down." So we go, man, and this match, AJ, is just, it's an eye-opening experience for me, man. I am not ready. I'm outclassed, man. I get exposed. They see how bad I am. I'm like a deer in the headlights in the ring, dude. We're in front of a moderately large crowd, because I mean it's a huge festival. There's like 70,000 people there. There's a wrestling ring, so anytime anything's happening in the wrestling ring, people are going, "Hey, what the fuck's happening over there?" People start flocking, and there's maybe, when I go out there, probably like 200, 300 people, which is a solid crowd.
Crowd for an indie show. That's a good crowd.
Show that I'm not supposed to be on, that I'm not ready to be on. But I really am just trying to do it to get these fucking tickets, because I wanted to see Municipal Waste and some other bands, like I think Slayer was there or something too. I think there was like Wu-Tang Clan too. So it was a badass show. I wanted to be there.
For sure.
I like I said, it was total exposed, man. And then I went back and I showed the footage to Funaki, and he just was like, "What the fuck is this? Like, this is awful. You do not wrestle until I say it's okay." And I'm like, "Okay, fair enough. All right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I sucked." So I didn't wrestle for another year, man. I just stayed in the gym with him, trained all year long. And then literally the next Fun Fest, the next year, I made my real actual debut. Dude, let me tell you, AJ, it's one of the coolest fucking moments that I've had. Because like I grew up as like a punk kid here in San Antonio, going to like shitty punk venues here. And I've always kind of been about like the DIY lifestyle, man. But my first match, one of the coolest fucking things is there's like a Thrasher magazine video out there that has like clips of my match in it from Fun Fest. My first match. And it's like, to me, at that point, it was like, I fucking made it, Like,
that's huge. No, that's huge.
Yes.
That's one of the questions I was going to ask, and that's a great first one in terms of, hey, what triumphs have you had? Because again, the pro wrestling world, and when you were talking about the grind and stuff like that, and training and you know, you got to cobble together jobs to make sure you have time to train. It's like, you know, musicians go through a version of that.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Comedians go through a version of that. You know, filmmakers and actors, writers. I speak from experience, right? Where
Right,
it's
yeah.
just like, yeah, and then you get those like, oh man, that was a dud, and then you get those ones. Oh no, like I did hit that one. I did hit that one out of the park.
Yeah,
like
that was great. Yeah.
I did do that one. I have crossed from like no longer like, hey, I'm training to be a wrestler or I'm trying to be no, I'm a writer now. No, I'm
Now,
a wrestler
yeah.
now. I am a musician because I got paid for a gig at a bar or whatever
Fuck yeah,
version
man.
it is.
Whatever
I love
that
it.
first one is, that you've crossed that threshold now, and now you can fucking hold your head high and be like, whatever the fuck no one can take it away from you at that point. You know, hey man, I did that. There's no graduation ceremony. You don't get a fucking cap and gown. You're a musician and you finish. You know, there's nothing like that. It's just kind of like there's that threshold you cross over, and then it's like boom. Now you're in the shit. You're in now, and no matter what, you can't get out. That's
You got a taste.
what I've known me. Yeah,
you got a taste.
You get a little taste, and then you're hooked, man. And then from there, man, when I made that first match at Fun Fest, bro, I hit the ground running, man. I kept my schedule as full as I possibly could, man. I would hit every show in the area that I possibly could get on. I would go out to Dallas and Houston and just do like, there's this in Dallas, there's this one particular area, man, that has 3 shitty little flea markets, all in like a 3-mile radius. And what we would do is, just to get the experience, man, we would set it up to where we'd have 3 shows in like the course of like 2 hours, where we'd have one show at the one flea market, keep your gear on, hop into the car, drive to the next one, do the same shit, go to the next one, do the same shit. You just had 3 matches in one day, and you got paid the equivalent of 1 match. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, you get the experience, and you try to get as many reps in as you can so you can become as useful as you can to better promotions and climb up that ladder. But man, for me, I could only do that shit for so long, because I had to be real with myself. And I think that was honestly multiple times, man, is I found that that's kind of where I differ, I feel, from a lot of different people, where I feel like I have a very solid sense of self-awareness, in the sense that, like, man, I would step into the ring and I would consistently be the least talented physically person in that match. You know, it's akin to someone like, you know, like you said, like maybe doing stand up and going out there and bombing 5 times in a row. And, you know, maybe there's some comedians out there that would fucking pat themselves on the back and be like, hey, I'm still a comedian. To me though, man, I'd go out there and I'd bomb, and I'd be like, fuck, man, like, why am I doing this? This sucks. I'm bringing down the quality of everything, you know?
Right.
And then, honestly, man, when we could talk about it in a bit, but when I started running heavy metal, I was still actively kind of wrestling. But when I would start putting together shows for heavy metal, I would intentionally leave Dylan Dunbar off the card, because goddamn, that guy couldn't wrestle. So, like, I stopped booking myself. And then it became one of those things, man, where I had to step back and go, okay, if I won't book me, how the fuck can I expect anybody else to book me? So it's at that point, man, that I just said, you know what, man, this shit ain't for me. The in-ring stuff ain't for me. I'm going to step back. Mm-hmm. But I know that I have so much other skills to offer pro wrestling, so many other talents to offer pro wrestling. It doesn't have to be in the ring.
I think that's, again, that self-awareness. I think that, and I think that's why you're a great promoter, right? I think that I want to be part of this bigger thing, pro wrestling, right? AJ is a writer. I want to be part of this bigger thing, the writing world and so on. Like, I'm a competent writer, but like, I'm a really good writing teacher. I'm a really fucking good editor, right? And so I leaned into that at a certain point, instead of being like, well, this thing has to be my identity in terms of this bigger world of the writing landscape. And the pro wrestling world, I think, is served well in that way, especially with promoters, because they are the mind behind the production that takes all these other people and different little moving parts.
Right.
In your wrestling, though, who was the character, right?
Oh.
And so, because there's part of it that's like, the thing with pro wrestling, again, like stand-up comedy and a few other things, that you need the audience to do that real practice, right? You can train in the Funaki Dojo all you want. Until you get in front of that crowd, is that going to work? Do I have the chops? And so on. Who was the character, and what was kind of maybe your style, or what did you kind of like lean into in terms of like, well, this is what I can do in the ring, and this is what I'm going to accentuate?
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, with wrestling, you always hear like when guys come up with characters or who they are in the ring, it's just them turned up to 11.
Sure.
It's just you really loud, With me, honestly, it's kind of similar. I'm always kind of the almost like a class clown, kind of obnoxious, annoying, and those are my personality traits, and I know that, it can kind of be endearing to some people, like luckily, like my wife, like I hope to think, if she finds it endearing, but, it's just one of those things, man. When I got into wrestling, it was very easy for me to just be a fucking goof. There wasn't necessarily always like a character. It was just kind of like, I'm just obnoxious. Me and my tag partners at the time, like, because that was the thing, AJ. Like, I was never really solid enough to carry myself as a singles wrestler. I had to have somebody help burden. Somebody had to help carry that weight with me. I had to have a tag partner. Had to have that number 2 with me, or I was the number 2,
Sure.
And often I was just the I guess you could say like the charisma, the jokester, the guy that make the crowd laugh, the guy that could, didn't take himself too seriously,
Right.
That's where I kind of excelled. And for a while, Eddie, my whole thing, my whole philosophy was kind of built around, if I can do something in the ring that makes myself laugh, I feel 95% of the time it's going to make somebody else laugh. Or if I could do something that's going to, piss somebody off and get them mad, I know that, I have that ability because I've made 95% of the people I've interacted with pissed off or something like that, So It's just me turned up to 11. There was never really like a clear defined character. I mean, Dylan is who I am. Dylan Dunbar is me, man. That's who I am, It's just a little different, and I'd wear some silly tights. And that's really the only difference, man. I don't wear tights as in my normal life.
No, I think that one of those things I wanted to get at, again, well, what was your thing? And that you're like, well, I was a tag wrestler. That was where I thought it worked best, right? And I think, again, as a promoter, you bring that eye at what's best for the show. Like, what's best for this match, right?
Right.
And so you gotta, there's that give and take. And in a world like pro wrestling, where I would imagine, and I've seen a tiny bit, that some people may not want to give and take, right? Because it is, hey, how do I get myself over? How do I put the spotlight on me, kind of thing. But at the same time, we also have to put on a show that's a collective effort, right? And so how do we find that balance? What about the move from wrestling to heavy metal wrestling?
Right.
As the promoter and the mastermind, and like I have a vision for this bigger thing, I'm gonna go for that,
dude. So honestly, what ends up happening is, man, I'm really good friends with a lot of really good fucking wrestlers, but there were a lot of guys that just weren't getting their fair shake at things. Maybe it was because you didn't, instead of having a fucking 6-pack, you just had a flat stomach and you looked good. They're like, well, you need abs. Well, what the fuck, man? Like, does abs make you a better wrestler? It makes you look better, sure, but it doesn't make you physically a better wrestler. It doesn't make you better. It helps, sure, no doubt, but it doesn't make you mentally a better wrestler. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things, man. I saw a lot of my guys that I was really close with that put in so much work, guys like Scotty, that you see the process, you see the evolution, you see how much they fucking put into it. Like, man, I got so much respect for him, and he's told the story so many times. Like, we got this guy, Scotty, like, he fucking lived down in Mexico, didn't have a place to live, just went down to Mexico and trained for 3 months, I'm like, just fucking winged it. Just because he wanted to learn. Yeah, just because he wanted to learn that style, Didn't have a place to live, just was, dude, imagine being homeless in Mexico, man, as an American as a white guy in Mexico. That's a bad idea, Like, that's not a good fucking plan,
Yeah, nobody should do that. Nobody should do that. And then this guy going to be sold into white slavery or something. Yeah.
Like, it's just, hey, man, it's dangerous. It's not smart. You barely speak Spanish. But hey, man, he knew that's what he wanted to do, and he fucking did it. So, like, when he comes back from Mexico, like, these promotions are leaving him on red. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like, how? Like, did you not just see what this guy just sacrificed? Like, how are you guys not jumping on this guy's dick right now? Like,
Right,
he
sure.
should be your example for everybody, you know? Like, look how bad he wants it, you know? So it's one of those things, man. And I've always said it, dude. Heavy metal wrestling was started like in a bad way, in a like very bitter, vengeful, like I'm gonna fucking show all of you kind of way. But it blossomed into something totally different, man. The first time we had that show, and it was a bunch of guys that aren't normally utilized on shows, man. I think we kind of set the precedent of like, look, man, we're the new guard. We're not going to go to these old dudes that have been, you know, wrestling for 10, 15 years, and they come in and they just collect the paycheck and they head home, and it's same old, you know. It's oftentimes back then when heavy metal started, dude, there's 8 companies, and the only difference between all the companies was the fucking initials of the companies.
Sure.
Same roster, same titles, same tag team, same guys. It was the same shit, man. So we just wanted to do something a little different, man. And that's kind of where it was rooted, you know. It was like, hey, we're going to give the spotlight to these guys that are hungry, that are chomping at the bit, that are young, that have chips on their shoulders. And to this day, man, that is everything we look for like wrestlers on our team, man. Just, bro, you got a chip on your shoulder. You got something to prove. You got, you know, you want to show that, you know, you're not going to be overlooked anymore, bro. Hit heavy metal wrestling up. That's what the fuck we're about, you know. Like we live and breathe that shit, man, because that's how it started. It started with me having a chip on my shoulder, and it's kind of progressed from there. And luckily, man, you know, we've gotten to the point where, like, you know, we've succeeded really a good chunk in what we've done. So, like, the chip on my shoulder has gotten significantly smaller. But I feel like now the wrestlers, they have that intensity and that aggressiveness that comes with being overlooked and being, you know, passed over for the veteran that, you know, has a little more name value or whatever the fuck, right? But isn't working as hard, you know? So I think when we kind of present that attitude here in the Texas wrestling scene, a lot of wrestlers kind of pick up on it, and they're like, that's where I want to go. I want to fucking wrestle there, you know?
Yeah, I think that's good in that you target those young and hungry guys and women that want to get in there and do have something to prove. And maybe, you know, the old-fashioned kind of way of thinking about pro wrestling isn't working. I mean, we're seeing that in the, you know, in the at the national and international level and things like that. Wrestling viewership is at an all-time low. Things like this. Man. Attendance, of course, because of COVID. We'll get to that in a moment. Yeah. But that idea that, hey, these folks need a shot, and you said we're kind of changing the guard. We're the new guard here. I've always appreciated that heavy metal wrestling presents itself, and you specifically as the guy that runs it, as a very forward-thinking, let's take wrestling into the future in a very progressive way. You're not shy about who you are on the internet and whatnot and what you stand for. And I love that. You know, I thought, you know, I think it's great when you, as the promoter, will say, hey, well, we don't book these people because they sexually harass female talent.
Right.
I'm not going to book these people because they're fucking racist. I'm not going to book these people because of blank. Guess what? There's enough fucking talent everywhere where we don't need those motherfuckers, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
man.
I was like, and I saw you doing your thing, Dylan. And I saw you doing your thing as a promoter, and I was like, I know, like most DIY projects, a wrestling promotion in specific, a lot of these times these are losing endeavors. Is Dylan going to make it? You've been sticking around, man. It's been years now. It's been years now. And so that just there's the proof that like that vision can exist in a place that's just weirdly antiquated, like wrestling. I fucking love wrestling, Dylan, like you do.
Yeah, man.
I do.
Exactly like you said, dude. That's the perfect way of putting it. It's so antiquated. It's so stuck in these old like tropes and these old like I guess if you want to call them traditions, sure, by all means. But I mean, it's so stuck and rooted in this fucking mentality. Because, man, look, wrestling peaked as popularity did in the late 80s, and then again in the late 90s. You know, it peaked, and now everyone wants to do things as they were when they peaked, and thinking that you can replicate that shit. You know, like, sure. Hey, this is the way it was done in fucking 87 when they had a pop, so we're going to try to fucking replicate here in 2020. It's like, dude, that is what, 30, 40 years ago at this point, you know? Like, come on, man, you have to fucking
it doesn't work anymore.
Time. Yeah, and one of the things to me, AJ, that's always been so important, man, is, look, man, it pains me that I found out that our business is filled with a lot of scumbags, man.
Sure.
But the traditions of old basically lend the ability to these scumbags to hide behind that black curtain, man. You know, it's always kind of been like, we'll handle it in the locker room. You don't do that publicly. You don't need to say, you know, that X and X is a fucking racist or they're, you know, a sexual abuser or something like that. Handle it in the locker room. My take on that shit is like,
that's just protecting it. That's just
you guys have had protecting it for sure, but like, look, man, you guys have had 30 years to handle it in the locker room, and you fucking have it. You clearly can. So to me, it's important that we're transparent with this shit, man. That's what we preach in heavy metal, dude. Like, I'm transparent with every talent. Bro, I'll let talent look at our books. You want to see how much money we make? Fuck that. Let me rephrase that. You want to see how much money we lose? Like, you want to see that, man? You want to see like what our plans are and all that shit, man. I'm transparent with every piece of talent that walks through, man. Like, hey, look, this is what I can afford. This is what it's going to happen. This is what, like there's no secrets here with me, man. That's the way it functions with everybody. From the guy that walks in on his first day of training to the dude that's been wrestling for 20 years, you both get the same Dylan Dunbar, I'm not going to switch up. Heavy metal's not going to treat you different. Dylan Dunbar's not going to treat you different. I'm transparent about how I feel. And look, man, I think the way things are is, like you said, man, there's so much fucking talent in our locker rooms across the United States, dude. Not even just centralizing Texas, because you know me, man. I've got a big heart on for Texas, right? But like looking at like the entire like United States, man, like there's so much talent out there, and with all that talent, there's no need to work with shitty people anymore, man. And there's an abstract kind of, I guess, morality that comes with it. I'm not saying that I'm the fucking morality police on this stuff, man. But I mean, if someone's a racist, it's very easy to say, okay, hey, man, you use racial slurs, like you can't have you around, man. Like you use them very casually. That's not something that we can have. Yeah, it's not something we want in our locker room. You make women feel uncomfortable when you're around them because you're a sexual abuser and you have a history of that. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, dude, I adamantly, like, it's very important to me that we cultivate that type of environment because it's only going to be better for wrestling as a whole. That's the way I look at that shit, man.
I agree, dude. I think, and that's, I think, the best approach. And then, over time, hopefully, those the shitty people kind of go away. The writing world's the same way. A whole bunch of shitty people get their books out before people that are, better people, and actually sometimes, oftentimes, usually better writers, right? Yeah. But they're like grandfathered in or whatever. And so we don't care if you're racist. We don't care if you're like anti-immigrant. We don't care if you're, again, a sexual abuser. We don't care, and they get enabled by the people around them because they don't say stuff. And now with social media and the way that people can communicate, like it's easier to kind of just put your money where your values are and be like, well, we don't support that person anymore. Oh, well, this person, we found out that they're kind of a scumbag, so we don't support them anymore. And just like that, the landscape and the market changes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're doing that in the wrestling world. And again, like, you ain't hurting to fill up a card with guys that want to get booked with heavy metal wrestling. I know absolutely. That. I know that. I've observed it. I know. I've seen it. And that goes to show that you're doing the right work.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, man, I mean, we'll throw out examples. We had to cancel with our plans with Tessa Blanchard last year.
I remember. It was a big thing.
It was one of those things that, it was. We were the first company, from what I understand, that was like that kind of pulled the plug on it. And it was important to me, man, that we were able to set that precedent, because I felt like, I got a lot of blowback from when people said that, I was trying to be like the morality police. Again, it's like, hey, man, look, it's not that I think I'm the judge of what's right and wrong, but I am the judge of what is right and wrong in my locker room and in our promotion, and I want to send that message that, like, man, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your name value or anything like that. Like, if it's not something that stands with the morals of heavy metal wrestling, we're not going to abide by it, man. Even if it's going to cost me money, even if it's going to lose me, so much, if it's going to lose me my position in wrestling, at least I have my integrity. And I feel like that's something that is insanely missing from wrestling in general. It's just integrity. And I feel like heavy metal wrestling has kind of tried to implement that the best that we can. Because, in all honesty, it sucks, man. I think it's almost every entertainment, like, industry that you kind of look into, it's mainly dominated by a lot of people that aren't the best of people outside of their talents, and it sucks, man. And I, for one, like, fear now. It's very weird, and I've had fans that have expressed this kind of fear to me. It's like, hey man, I don't want my hard-earned money now going. I'm apprehensive to buy this wrestler's t-shirt because what if in 5 years this person's a piece of shit, And it's definitely a concern, I feel, of fans now and of wrestlers and promoters alike, man. It's just it's different, and I feel like it's important that we remain transparent and not try to do things behind the curtain, because it's only going to end up shooting ourselves in the foot. You lose these fans, and then more importantly, you lose the integrity of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think that, because you work with people working so closely together and all that stuff is, becomes a risk and a liability. And you're like, well, we don't even want to take the chance. Like, and if other people want to take that risk and book these fucking, shitty people, then there's plenty of people that again have that antiquated way of thinking. Yeah, you might still get booked, but again, I think time will tell on this, and I think things will change.
It's just one of those things, man. Like with wrestling, it's like, hey, man, if I can't trust you to be a good person, how the fuck can I trust you not to break someone's neck?
Right.
Yeah,
and those things do happen, right?
Yeah,
and people have certain vendettas or whatever, and take liberties there in the ring in front of a crowd, and that's just bad shit for heavy metal wrestling at the end of the day, right? But I admired that. And I knew, and I saw that you took a little bit of heat for it, but I thought that, just having that public statement, and that this is, the face of heavy metal pro wrestling is not a face that, can mess with this kind of stuff. And I think you made the right call. And one of those things I truly admired. I really admired.
I appreciate that, man. Because like I said, it was a difficult decision to make, man. But in all honesty, it wasn't a difficult decision to make.
No, yeah, you're not going to lose any sleep over that. Come on.
Yeah, it's not something you lose sleep over. But, when you look at, I guess, if you really want to be like, if you want to get into that kind of side of things, it's just like you look at the financial blowbacks and the aspects of things, like, fuck, you lose some money. But I mean, at the end of the day, bro, my integrity is intact. I feel like, my peers in the locker room and whatnot kind of support the idea behind it, and it's one of those things, man. It's just, you want to set the precedent, So, if a famous wrestler that comes from a fucking legendary family isn't going to be able to get away with it, fucking Joe Schmo from down the street's not going to be able to get away with it. And so we kind of just send that message like, hey, this is what we tolerate. This is what we don't, man. That's honestly kind of what we've been rooted in. Even since before, these instances that we've had, that's something that's been extremely important to us, man. It's not necessarily fighting like social justice and stuff like that, man. It's just about like, dude, I used to love Hulk Hogan, man. That was my thing, man. I grew up as a Hulk Hogan fan, like Hollywood Hogan, man. That was the shit. Even watching him return to SmackDown in like 2003, that was fucking awesome to me. Like, I loved watching Hulk Hogan. Like, I was heartbroken that I found out that Hulk Hogan was a big fucking racist. Right. And I was only heartbroken as a fan. As a human being, I was fucking repulsed. Yeah, I can't believe I fucking, I followed this person. I supported this person. This guy's a piece of shit racist,
Right.
I do not want the fans to have to go through that in 30 years, 20 years. You know what I mean? Of the wrestlers today, like, hey, these guys on top, guess what? They're actually fucking scumbags. Don't meet your heroes. They're all pieces of shit. Right. You don't want that type of thing to continue on with wrestling, because I'm not saying it was a traumatic experience for me by any means, but I mean, hey,
you're
man,
let down.
You're let down by it. It's like, fuck, man, I have all your action figures. I have your shirt. I've watched every one of your I love Hulk Hogan, and you just fucking ruined it, buddy. Thanks a lot. Now I can't enjoy it anymore, because every time I do it, I have these creeping thoughts like, yeah, this guy's a piece of shit. Just remember. So yeah, it's just that's a really good example of, like, moving forward, of what I want future fans to be able to avoid. I want a fan to be able to be like, yo, I was a fan of fucking this wrestler, and guess what? He was a solid person. He never fucking was a piece of shit abuser or a fucking racist or anything like that. I think that kind of sets that if we kind of stop it now, we don't have to deal with it in the future.
I agree, man. I think that's Yeah, because we get let down all the time with our these people we look up to and entertainers and stuff. It just goes on and on and on. Even something fucking Gina Carano's over here anti-masker and saying things, comparing to the, I'm doing air quotes, oppression of conservative people and comparing them to Jews in the Holocaust, and I'm like, what are you doing, lady?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and again, me thinking as a fight fan, like pioneer of women's MMA and all these kinds of things, but I'm like. But now we have dozens and dozens of chicks that would also wipe the floor with her and aren't shitty.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we've evolved.
So,
like, we don't need you.
exactly.
We don't need you. And
I agree 100%, man. And that's I think now a lot of people kind of have woken up to that and realized, like, wait a second, man, like, we don't need a Hulk Hogan. We don't need a fucking Gina Carano. Why are we acting like these people are, the fucking end all be all? Like, fuck them, man. They can be replaced. They aren't irreplaceable. They can be replaced with people that have consciences. You know what I mean? Like that's as the short and long of it, man. If you have a fucking conscience and you live with yourself after that, I couldn't.
And so clearly, that plays into, again, the Tessa Blanchard thing plays into account the who do you book and why and things. Maybe outside of these other, maybe more intense kind of, issues we're grappling with as a society day in and day out. What about the other stuff? How do you book talent? And what about, dude, who do you bring on board? And how do you make those calls as the guy?
Honestly, man, we look right now for heavy metal, like we said earlier, man, just guys with fucking chips on their shoulders, man. Like guys that are trying to prove something, not only to themselves, but like to the wrestling world, man. Because I usually end up seeing like guys that show out and just give everything they have and leave it all in the ring because they have something to prove, we look for that, man. I mean, like just last night we did this show that we called like Breakout Week, and it was legitimately like a bunch of wrestlers that we've never utilized before against a bunch of our like normal guys. And it was just kind of like, let's see, can the fucking cream rise to the top? Does one of these guys that we've never booked before, can they show us something? Can we feel your fucking like your love for this game and the passion for what we do? And if I can, and we can feel this shit, man, doesn't matter how you perform in the ring, I need to be able to feel your love for it when you're in there. If you're in there and you're just kind of a fucking robot going by the motions, painting by numbers, just trying to do whatever the fuck just to get, a white envelope at the end of the night, I don't want you, man. But if you're here and you're showing up because you're like, dude, I'm fucking so sick of being overlooked, I haven't gotten opportunities, I busted my ass, this is what I want, I love this shit, and you walk through the curtain and the crowd can feel it, they can feel that authenticity, they can feel you being genuine, and I can feel you being genuine and authentic, bro, I will fucking do everything in my power to try to make you as successful as possible, And I'm not some fucking star maker or anything like that by any means, man, but I am someone that'll fucking give you my platform, give you a ball, and let you run with it until you drop it.
Dude, I love that you can observe somebody and be like, are they just mechanically good and technically good? Or do they have that heart also?
Do they love it? Yeah. They have some heart. You got some passion behind it. And
that's really, similar to like how, like when I work with young writers or something, a friend of mine or an acquaintance, we look at this piece of writing, or as an editor is probably the best way. As an editor, I'm going to select things to get published, and I would like to there'd be things I'd get that didn't have anything wrong with it. I was like, mechanically, I can't edit this if I wanted to. Every word's in the right, every comma's in the right place. I don't feel anything. I would take the risk on the person that I needed to work with on the mechanics a little bit, back and forth over email. But there was heart in that piece.
Yeah,
I would take that risk, and that's a different type of editor, and that's a different type of promoter that you are. Because some guys want guys that are very mechanically sound and just say and this, versus that guy that, hey, we can work on it with the mechanics in the ring. You could just teach that. You can train that shit forever. But the heart, how do you teach that? You cannot teach that, right? And so, I'm not a mastermind either, but I have taken numerous people to the next level. That's it. Let me just get you to the next level. I ain't shooting you to the stratosphere. I ain't fucking Superman like that. But I can take you to the next level. And you as a promoter having that eye for this young talent that, hey, we can, just more practice and practice and practice, which is you book them. That's how you get them to practice. Yep. And but you have that heart, you have that passion that I don't have to teach that. I don't have to light that fire under your ass. The rest will work on it.
That exactly, dude. That's it, AJ. That's it in a nutshell, man. If if I feel your fire, if I can feel some sense of determination, you really want this shit and you're not going to let anything stop you. Like I said, man, I'll ride with you until the wheels fall off, you know? But you know, that passion's got to be there first, you know? Luckily, man, like last night was a really good example, dude. We had some guys they blew us out of the fucking water. Never seen them before. Guys like their second, third matches that you can feel their love for the game through it. And dude, I don't give a shit if you're rough around the edges. Like, we're an independent wrestling company. I don't have to worry about like ratings and shit like that, you know? Sure. Like, dude, I will give those opportunities to these people that are a little rougher around the edges and let them develop, because what I think is important too is, dude, you can see these fans, they love the story, the progression. I feel, again, it's about being able, like, these fans being able to sense, you know, authenticity and people being genuine. Like, if you watch someone that starts at fucking square one or step one and they progress, you can follow with that. You know, you can watch it on a weekly basis. Like, hey man, this guy, I saw him when he was trash or when he was just getting started and he wasn't very good. And now fucking here we are a year later, 2 years later. And, hey man, this guy's pretty fucking good now, you know? And I think fans, like, that's a different experience, you know, on the independent level. And that's something I like to, I don't want to say exploit, but I mean, I like to use that a lot. You know, I like to have those fans be able to get those attachments to these guys that are just breaking in. And then before you know it, it's like, hey man, remember him? Remember that guy that lost 50 fucking matches in a row? You know, like, yeah, he's pretty good now, you know, like, he's really solid.
No, that's great. Yeah. And seeing guys starting to like just barely start training, then like being a year, 2, 3, 4 deep into their career, as long as I've been plugged into it now, more than that even, it's just awesome. I'm like, oh, that guy like came through. Like, oh, he got in shape again, got his character, is getting booked, and you refine that. Again, they're moldable, right? Again, with the right training and the right people promoting them and giving them the shot, they get molded and refined and polished, right? And I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's all heavy metal has really kind of been designed to do, honestly, man. Like, from jump, you know, it's about trying to progress people, trying to make people better. You know, like I said, it was rooted in that, like, we're going to show you kind of that mentality, you know. But it's kind of always stayed that way of being like, you know, hey, it doesn't matter if you're not getting opportunities elsewhere; they'll be here, you know, eventually you're gonna pop, and then the bigger companies will have to put you on. You know, they'll have to take notice at that point, and that's what we've been about, man. Just getting guys experience, progressing them, and getting them up to snuff. You know.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a great way to run a promotion. I think it's a great way to consistently do it well, too, I think. And that attitude of, hey, well, we want to show the naysayers. I think that's important. I think you're always going to have those in any kind of creative kind of endeavor, right? That there's some folks that aren't going to like it, are going to say, oh, well, Dylan's starting a wrestling promotion, fucking whatever. AJ thinks he's a writer, whatever. Looking homeboy with the guitar at the bar. Yeah. What? Like,
yeah, I'm sure that'll work out.
Fuck them. Like, my thing's like, oh, cool. Like, I heard you, bitch. Like, I'm now wait. Just fucking wait, right?
Right.
And then you get those little moments,
made me work
right?
harder. You know what I mean? Right. Like, you just gave me motivation. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way I always look at that type of stuff, man.
Yeah, a lot of people will get kind of turned off by that and everything, but they're always going to exist. So you just use it as fuel and be reasonable with it. I think that's a smart way to approach it. I'm curious, man, with wrestling being an audience-oriented piece of art, how do you continue to do that when we can't be around each other? Pandemic hits about a year ago. Tell me.
AJ, is probably the most challenging year of our careers, all of us included, man. Let me just say, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back and blow smoke up my own ass, but like right before the pandemic hit, heavy metal was really fucking hot. I mean, you know, we were just coming off of the No Ring, No Rules show in February of 2020, which was a fucking no ring death match with Casanova Valentine, and it was huge, highly regarded, man. It got a lot of love from like internet wrestling fans. I mean, between us, we made a shit ton of money off ticket sales. Like, dude, it seemed like, all right, dude, we're finally,
slam dunked it. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, okay, the next show we had we were kind of piggybacking off of WrestleMania weekend and working with one of like the hottest indies out at the time. And we were going to Tampa Bay and doing a show out there and kind of swinging dick for Texas. You know, we were calling it Texas Forever, featuring top Texas talent against some of the best indie guys out there, and just being like, look, y'all motherfuckers have been sleeping on Texas. This is what we're doing. You know, this is what's happening down here. Just because you guys don't think we're as hot as something in New York or in the Midwest or in California, because we're all the way down here south, people forget about us. And it's like, yo, we're fucking killing it down here too. So that was the plan before COVID hit. That obviously changes our entire game. You know, we have to cancel the Tampa bookings and whatnot, and it becomes that's when it really starts for us. In all honesty, man, we took the better part of 2020 off wisely. You know, obviously waiting to kind of see like how things play out. In all honesty, what ends up happening, man, is I just kind of fall ass end into a venue that I end up basically buying. It was or leasing, I should say. It's a spot inside of a shopping mall that is in San Antonio that is basically pretty deserted. The shop, I mean, wow. You'd have to imagine that the mall is doing pretty rough with traffic when they're like, fuck it, let's bring in the pro wrestling people. You know what I mean?
Let's put the wrestlers next to the Dillards, right? Like,
dude, we're next to Macy's actually. So.
Yeah, Dillards.
So Macy's actually, just went out of business. That's fucking even funnier. So, Jesus Christ. But that's how kind of like I guess you could say old this mall is. But fuck, man, it was one of those things that like the price was too good not to do. The space was really nice. We wanted to kind of have not necessarily like a training facility, but an area where our local guys could come in and train and wrestle and be able to get ring time and be able to learn. Because, man, like I was never the best technically gifted wrestler, so I can't start a wrestling school. That's not what I'm trying to do. I don't want to train people. But what I do know, I know how to book shows. I know how to promote. I know how to produce. I know how to edit. I do all our video work. I do all our graphics. I do everything backstage, everything but I do commentary, everything but wrestling. I can teach all that shit. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of have a gym that we can have these guys train at. And eventually what it became was a small studio. So what we've done basically starting in September of 2020 was we've basically run weekly shows here with a tiny capacity audience. We have 10 fans maximum. And it's the same reoccurring 10 fans that are basically going out, making sure that they're getting tested regularly, making sure that, you know, we're obviously doing temperature screenings for each of these 10 fans. We've tried our best to kind of create our own bubble here.
How interesting.
And
cool.
It's been pretty successful, honestly, in that sense. We haven't really had, I mean, thank God, knock on wood and all that, we haven't necessarily had any issues with COVID, other than, like, I think one of our guys ended up getting COVID from his place of work. We were able to do contact tracing, and it was like, okay, cool. We shut everything down. We sanitized for like 3 weeks. We quarantined forever. Sure. We got everybody back up. We canceled our tapings, and then everyone had clean tests. Boom, we're back at it again. But it's one of those things, man, that we've tried to obviously mitigate the risk with this low audience. And we've been able to produce these weekly shows because we have such a badass production team. Dude, we're filming shows on Fridays, doing post-production work and having them airing every Tuesday on IWTV. And it's been awesome, man, because these guys, these wrestlers, these fans too, they wouldn't have any other wrestling in a safe way. And I'm not here to shit on anybody else out there right now, AJ, but man, I see a lot of wrestling companies, and especially in Texas, that are just
unsafe.
They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit, man.
They're unsafe, yeah.
400 people in a venue sitting shoulder to shoulder. You might be able to count 25 masks. You know, it's they don't necessarily give a shit. In their locker room, they've got, 50, 60 guys. Our shows are, we have 4 matches at max. We have 10 guys in our locker room, 10 guys or girls in our locker room that have all had, COVID testing and whatnot. It's been challenging, man, but it's one of those things that, we've tried to do everything possible in our power to continue to provide safe and safe entertainment in this during like the pandemic. And luckily it's been successful for us, man. Obviously, with the vaccine and whatnot rolling out, we're anticipating hopefully being able to in next year being able to do full events. But for right now, we're kind of happy doing these lower capacity shows. We actually just now started looking into larger venues. We have one secured now for the Death Bowl, which is right around the corner. That is something we're really looking forward to. Like landing a venue that has 2,500 capacity, and then basically saying, okay, we're going to take less than 10% of that capacity and do a show safely. That to me is the best way of going about things. Right now what we've done is we have a venue that seats 2,500. We've limited ticket sales to 100.
Right.
And they're all at tables. So it's like you get a group of 2, 3, or 4. You can't come by yourself, unfortunately. You have to kind of be in groups, so we are able to section off and do social distance safely. Right. I think what we measured is we have actually like 10 feet of space between each table. Okay. And it's a huge venue. That I feel is obviously a little safer to do right now than a lot of other things that we're seeing. But I mean, we hear it thrown around so much, man. It's just unprecedented. It's no one really knows how to navigate. It's difficult, but we're trying our best, like building our own map for the shit.
Yeah, I think that thinking outside the box and again, I'm impressed with those really low numbers of attendance. I think that's the way to go. It is a job, right? Like that entertainment, like, I'm creating entertainment right now, right? And then well, some versions of entertainment, do have a certain amount of risk involved. And so you just, at this point, it's been a year, right? We got to do our best to mitigate that risk while still getting the shit we need as humanity, right? Like we do need like entertainment. Right now, we need to find joy in life.
Right.
Because and it's like, well, a lot of people get joy from wrestling, and you are providing that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Not only that, man, but again, just being able to provide the platform for a lot of guys and girls. I keep saying guys, catch-all term for me, my bad, but it's like one of these things. It's just like, you get all these wrestlers that are just so fucking talented, and they're probably on their onward towards their prime or in their prime. Guys that are just starting to catch on, that have been working at this shit for 10 to 12 years, 15 years. This 2020 is supposed to be the year that it all tips for them, because everything's lining up well. And it hurts, obviously, for that to be kind of taken from them. And obviously it doesn't pale in comparison to, COVID deaths and whatnot. It pales in comparison to that. But on the other hand, it's a shame for these guys. 10 years of hard work to kind of go by the wayside and not be utilized because, their prime is going to basically be affected by COVID and whatnot. And again, who knows how long we're going to be caught in this situation. We've been in it a year, could be a few more years that we're in this.
Who knows?
And now we're looking at, the possibility of like a whole crop of wrestlers in their prime that lose out that ability to perform, So being able to provide a safe way of doing that is extremely important to me. It hurts me almost on a personal level, man, when I see like shows that aren't taking these same precautions, because it's like, fuck, man, like I couldn't live with myself if I knew that one of my fans was extremely sick and it was all due to something that happened at my show.
Right.
It's always that's before fucking COVID, man. That was our biggest fear. I mean, dude, we do these deathmatch shows, and I'd have all our fans sign waivers. Not because I'm like, hey, I don't want to get in trouble, but it's just kind of like, hey, man, like,
just
in
case.
Okay? Remember, if something happens to you, like, I want to be able to take care of the shit, just because, and to know, like, that's with the pandemic and whatnot, that's increased 100 times. It's obviously worrying, I miss obviously being able to do bar wrestling where, we can pack 300 people into a venue that's only supposed to have 200 and fucking guys shoulder to shoulder with a ring there, like it's that type of atmosphere is what made heavy metal kind of special to a lot of people. That bar atmosphere was awesome. It was like being at a concert.
Sure.
But now it's a little different. We're in a shopping mall and we have 10 fans that are, they're diehard heavy metal fans, but it's also just kind of like, how much noise can 10 people really make, in all honesty,
Right. At least
it
you
is
have an
challenging.
audience, but again, with wrestling being so, you need the audience to react, right? We
Right.
need them to boo and to pop and all these kinds of things. And so when you only have 10 people doing it, again, at least there's 10. But
Right.
you mentioned the death matches and stuff. Tell me about the Death Bowl.
Oh man.
Tell me about this. It's a big event. Tell me about it.
It is, man. Like the way I always, it sounds awful to say, man, but our fans are bloodthirsty, man. Wrestling fans can be bloodthirsty, and they
Sure.
require like a yearly sacrifice, you know. And this is our annual sacrifice. You know, we usually try to plan at least one big death match event a year. Last year would have been, you know, the no ring, no rules. The year before that would have been Texas's first 1 day death match tournament. So it's kind of like a yearly event where we try to do at least one large death match show. And it usually is kind of rooted in that idea of, again, you know, our fans can be bloodthirsty, man. And our guys, dude, our wrestlers, our guys and girls, they're bloodthirsty, man. Some of them are just like, hey, man, I want a death match because I want, you know, to get the shit kicked out of me. I want to kick the shit out of somebody, and I want to be able to feel the fucking blood stream down my face because I get an adrenaline rush. We got some masochists on our team, man.
Sure.
And, you know, I unfortunately, I kind of have to lean into that sometimes, you know, and it's one of those things that it's what sets heavy metal apart. You know, a lot of people are kind of scared, not because of the pandemic or anything. They're just scared of deathmatch wrestling. They don't like it for whatever reason. They don't think it's real wrestling. They're fucking full of shit, whatever, right? A lot of people just won't touch it. And there's so many guys here. I mean, like, dude, Ruben Steele is the fucking guy.
I was about to mention him, yeah.
Dude, I and so many others are so fucking grateful to Ruben because, like, dude, I built my company off of Ruben's blood. Like, our notoriety has come from the stuff that Ruben has pulled off. Mm-hmm. And now it's so fucking awesome to me, man, that, like, after Ruben has done, this is exactly what we're talking about. Like, Ruben's been wrestling for fucking 12, 15 years. And the guy has never really gotten a whole lot of opportunities short of, like, working at heavy metal. And now that we've been able to kind of put him on a national platform on IWTV, and he's had these fucking crazy matches against Casanova Valentine and Ricky Shane Page. It's like, dude, we've been able to put him on a platform, and now these large national like deathmatch joints are fucking finally taking notice and going, wait a second, this guy is fucking great. And now Ruben's booked with some of, like, the premier deathmatch companies in the world. It's fucking phenomenal. I love to see that, you know, and it's this deathmatch stuff that we do. It's rooted in Ruben. But the thing that's been awesome to me, AJ, is there's so many other people that are not deathmatch wrestlers that, because of the success that they've seen with Texas deathmatches happening, and they've seen what's happened with Ruben, they've come out of the woodwork and be like, hey, man, I'd like to dip my toe into that pool. Yeah. And I've always got to pull them back and be like, all right, do you know what you're fucking getting yourself into? Like, you know, I'm not going to, like, it's always music to my ears, man, because as it's all fucking saying in wrestling, you know, red equals green. You know, that blood, that's, fans love it, you know? So when I have a new wrestler that comes up and they're saying, hey, I'm interested in doing deathmatch, I always warn them, like, hey, go tell somebody else that. Don't tell the promoter, because I'm about to fucking throw you in a goddamn deathmatch tomorrow.
Right.
Like, that's not what you want to do, you know? But it's unique to heavy metal, at least here in Texas, man. A lot of people won't touch them. But, you know, we do things our own way, man. That's what we've always done. And Ruben has always been a big proponent of deathmatch wrestling, and I've always been a fan of it, dude. I grew up on fucking watching ECW and fucking Japanese deathmatch wrestling, like FMW and shit like that. Like, it was always something that I was always drawn into, and to be able to create it is fucking awesome to me, man.
No, I've again, I was a fan when the tape trading days, right? Again, I'd go online and trade tapes of the death matches from Japan and whatnot, all the bloody ECW stuff that, you know, I couldn't get in my region because I couldn't get it with the cable or whatever, and all these kinds of things. You know, I remember that. I moved away from it and kind of favored the technical kind of stuff a little bit more. But saw that you in Texas, I noticed that well, the deathmatch stuff has kind of seemed to go by the wayside, but y'all were doing it, and then specifically that was Ruben's style, right? Like, that's his thing. I hope to have. He's on my short list. Actually, I was just looking through again. I was like, oh yeah, Dylan knows him, and I'm gonna get him on soon. But we're acquainted, right? We're acquainted. Me and Ruben are acquainted. I've worked with him, and Ruben can wrestle too, though.
Dude,
like right,
Ruben's
and so
a fantastic wrestler.
he can really wrestle. I worked with him in a very
masochist, though. Like
I worked with him in a very family friendly show, and again, just no blood, no nothing, and just but good, like really good. And again, like me as a referee being there working with them and was very gracious that way. I always like when one of the boys was like, hey, we want to do this and that with the referee. And I'm like, that's cool. So Ruben has always been really good to me. And I always admire that, oh, I know he's a deathmatch guy. And I worked a couple gigs with him that were just very family-friendly shows. And I was like, he can wrestle. Like, he can
It's so good, dude. Ruben's so unique because, like, he's so family-friendly and stuff, but he's such a great deathmatch wrestler.
He's a sweetheart in the locker room. I don't want to sell him out, but he's a sweetheart.
Yeah, dude, he is, man. Like, even when we do, like, family shows, like, not family shows, like, Ruben doesn't cuss.
Yeah.
So, like, it's so good to me. It's so funny to me, like, Ruben will come out and be like, after he's like bleeding and doing all this shit, he's like, I'm gonna kick your freaking butt, you pipsqueak. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like, you can let it fly today, man. Like, you're
so funny.
This bloody dude, man, and you're saying pipsqueak and dork and stuff like that. It's like, man, you can call him an asshole if you want, buddy. You know,
but
that's
so funny.
That's Ruben, man. He's such a unique person, and so. He's a Swiss Army knife for me, man.
Good.
Ruben's the top deathmatch wrestler I feel in the United States, definitely in Texas. You know, like
sure.
he's our tag champion right now. When he's not doing deathmatch stuff, he's extremely entertaining. He's our guy, man. He's what heavy metal's built on. There's a foundation of guys that we built heavy metal on, and Ruben's one of them, man.
Great, man. I'll have to have him on in a few weeks then. Awesome.
Oh yeah.
So future, and so weekly shows on IWTV, Death Bowl coming up. I think this will probably go up after Death Bowl, but we will link everybody to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can check it all out, dude. Everything that we do is on IWTV. You sign up, IWTV.live, use fucking code Heavy Metal. It gives me like a few bucks, put some money in Heavy Metal's pocket, dude. We keep doing it. We give you live weekly shows every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. Then we obviously have like our special events like the Death Bowl and whatnot that stream live on there as well. And you can check basically our entire catalog out on there. IWTV is fucking awesome, man. They've been awesome for us. They're $9.99 a month, and it's you get so many independent wrestling companies to check out. We're one of them.
And I think that people, one of those things, you want to put our money where our values are. And I'm one of those guys, like you can see all these books back here. Yeah, a lot of them are from Amazon, but I try to get as many of them from like independent bookstores and stuff like this. But like, and that's the same thing in the like wrestling world. Like I canceled my WWE Network shit fucking forever ago. And it's like, okay, well, let's like, I would always say like, instead of just, getting, whatever pay-per-view or whatever, like maybe just go to your local wrestling show and buy a t-shirt, right? Harder to do now, but we can go online. And we can click like on your stuff. We can get IWTV for just $10 a month and watch some independently curated and created wrestling. That again that stuff's important, right? To support the things
let me tell you, AJ, it doesn't get more fucking independent than what we do, man. Like we are, I'm telling you, man. Like our shirts that we make, dude. We screen print them ourselves. I make the shirts. They sit in my house here, and they dry all over the place. Everything we make is handmade. It's a labor of love, man. Every piece of fucking merchandise you get, you buy a koozie, you buy a shirt, you buy a hat. It was made by me. It was made by my wife.
Like it's in there. Like y'all packed it in there in the house. Yeah, it's just
dude. That is. It's not some fucking other third party drop shipping kind of shit, man. It's us, man. So like when you support companies like Heavy Metal Wrestling, it's going directly into Heavy Metal Wrestling, man. It goes right back into it. I think people have that kind of joy of knowing that, of like, hey man, like they can sense like it's real, bro. Like I said, man, where we started as a grassroots DIY company, we've had some success, but we're still always going to be that same grassroots DIY company, man.
That's great. And so looking to the future, what are your goals for Dylan Dunbar or Heavy Metal Wrestling?
Fuck, man. I just want to keep providing badass entertainment for heavy metal wrestling, man. I just want to keep doing what we're doing and get bigger and bigger and hopefully continue to help the Texas indie wrestling scene here. I want to make it pop, dude. For the longest time, AJ, there's been this narrative that, like, you have to, in order to make it in wrestling, you have to get out of Texas. That's always, dude, from the day I started, I was told that. There's words like fucking black hole, and that's what Texas was. It's an abyss. Get out of there. You got to go to St. Louis. You got to go to Indiana. You got to go to fucking New York or somewhere like that to make it.
Right,
dude. My biggest goal for heavy metal and just for Dylan Dunbar in general has always been to change that narrative, man. It has always been that. It's always been my goal. Instead of fucking having you move to fucking St. Louis, why don't those motherfuckers from St. Louis move down here? Let's make wrestling so fucking hot that these guys are coming down here to live here because that's how hot our scene is. That's always been my goal, man. I don't know if that's something that's going to be accomplished in 2021, but I know that, goddamn, man, before the day I throw in the towel, I'll make sure that Texas's best gets to stay in Texas, man, so we can keep growing this fucking scene.
No, I think that's a good, admirable goal, man. And I think with promoters like you and the new talent that is forward thinking and isn't rooted in those antiquated customs or quote unquote traditions, sure, all these kinds of silly things. But like, no, this Texas could be a super important hub. The talent's there. Are you kidding? Right? Yeah. Like, and so, yeah, you're right. I think it would be a cool destination hub for some people getting their wrestling chops and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and so since this is the Writers and Fighters podcast, obviously you're in the fight world as a former wrestler and current wrestling promoter, but I always invert the question for my guest, and I'll ask you, do you do any like reading or writing or any interest in that kind of stuff?
Oh, man. This is the first time that I've honestly ever told this, bro. But for a long fucking time,
exclusive.
I'm actually I like to think I'm a pretty solid writer. I'll have to send you some of the stuff that I write.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I used to write, I should say. Mm-hmm. I honestly, it sounds wild, man, but I used to write like narratives based around pro wrestling.
That's great.
It's something, dude. I've written, I'd say, thousands and thousands of fucking pages of this stuff throughout. I started at a very young age, man. I would write basically stories that would happen based in pro wrestling, at the time when I was really little, it was using people that I fucking saw on TV, like writing scenarios like about shit like that, fleshing them out, writing almost like full on chapters about fucking stuff. And then it became more along the lines of like, okay, fuck, I can kind of make stories based in pro wrestling universes. So it is something that I used to dabble in, man. Obviously with the promotion and actually wrestling, it's kind of taken a back seat. But every now and then, man, I'll get the itch and I'll sit down and I'll just write out some fucking really ridiculous story about like some shit that happens at a wrestling show that, it makes a good scene for me because I can relate to it so much. And never anything that I publish online or anything like that. It just sits on my hard drive, and
sure,
I look at it every now and then. I showed my wife, and she was like, "Holy shit, I didn't know you did this." And I was like, "Yeah, don't tell anybody."
Well, that's
don't tell anybody I write.
well, that's all you do as a promoter at the end of the day when you're putting the things together. And well, this is the story, right? And again, that comes back to like, what's funny is I'm working on my first book. It's a collection of short stories, and there's one in there it takes place in a wrestling promotion, right? And
nice.
It's like a 15-page or something like that. But yeah, like I think that natural ability to be like, here's a familiar world.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what kind of happens in there or what could happen in there.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. I'm familiar with the world, bro. I can set a scene for you. I can tell you the ins and outs of it and make you feel immersed. And it's kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, fuck, you might not have known that this was a potential, setting for a scene, but, or setting for whatever fucking narrative you're trying to tell. It's unique, and it's something that I'm very comfortable writing about and being able to explain. So, yeah, man, the second that, you had messaged me about doing it, I knew that I was going to have to broach that subject. I was like, oh, fine, it's going to come out, man. Like, finally, publicly, they're going to find out. But no, man, and honestly, it was writing these like small stories and narratives about pro wrestling were insanely helpful when I actually started booking, because I was like, holy shit, man, I've written stories and feuds and stuff like that out, and like I've got it already. I've got a fucking handbook that I wrote for myself unintentionally, you know? So there's been situations where I've gone and like, oh, fuck, I remember I wrote this. So like, I'll change out, you know, this wrestler for Ruben Steele, and I'll change out this wrestler for Great Scott. And boom, have I got my story already written, you know? Like,
yeah. You're like, okay, well, I need next week I need some sort of betrayal. And you go into your back catalog of stuff. You're like, oh, here's one where we can make it be like, okay, the best friend turns on him because of blank, and you fill in that blank or whatever. And
man.
And
exactly.
And storytelling is storytelling. That's kind of, you know, the reason I like wrestling is because, well, I studied how to write stories for way too 8 years, whatever, in school. But it's like, oh, well, that's like all wrestling. Like it's interesting that again, just peaks and valleys of tension and excitement and conflict. I was like, that's just all pro wrestling stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
Dude, everything is pro wrestling. That's what I've learned, bro. Everything, pro wrestling is everything, and everything is pro wrestling.
Yeah. I always put that on Facebook. Everything is wrestling. Wrestling is everything, and I have a link to whatever thing is like pro wrestling.
Whatever is happening, yeah, bro. And
it all comes back to it.
So yeah, exactly, man. I see so many reflections and parallels and everything happening in the world in pro wrestling. It's so funny. It's so funny to me because pro wrestling has just changed the way I thought about so many different things, man. And in all honesty, it really started, no shit, when I was just really young, man. And I took a liking to writing out these scenarios and these stories, and it helped me get immersed more in wrestling. And it honestly was something that kind of paved the way for me to kind of become a promoter, honestly, because if I wasn't familiar with the stories and the writing of pro wrestling, there's no way that I would have been able to survive as a promoter and doing our own show, man. There's no fucking way. It was very important to the opening like months of heavy metal.
No, yeah, I think that's really cool, man. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that again, as the promoter, you are that person. You know, when people see wrestling, you're not watching so much a wrestling match. You're watching a show that takes place in a wrestling promotion, right?
Yeah.
And so in heavy metal wrestling, there's these figures and characters and so on. And so yeah, you need story to have characters do shit. And yeah, and wrestling has that visual storytelling that is so unique to it, man. And I think you do a kick-ass job. And I wish you all the luck, man. I've just been admiring and just like I thought one day we're going to work together or whatever. Once COVID lifts, all that stuff, I get a vaccine or something, and I'm in town. Man. You need a ref.
I do need a ref. Let's make that happen.
If you need a ref, you could throw me in there.
I'm down, man. You got a spot, man. I said I'm all about opportunities. You got a spot.
There we go. I love it. Send you my referee highlight reel.
Let's go.
So as we wrap up here, tell everybody where do we get to heavy metal wrestling? How do we support? And you can take us home, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Heavy Metal Wrestling is on every form of social media. Type our name in, it'll pop up. HeavyMetalWrestling.com is a nice little hub. Twitter at Heavy Metal Pro, Instagram Heavy Metal Wrestling SA. We are on IWTV.live. You sign up there using promo code Heavy Metal. You get 5 free days of IWTV to check out some of the best independent wrestling in the game. Plus, you can check out Heavy Metal's entire catalog uploaded there very soon. We've got weekly shows every Tuesday night on IWTV at 8 p.m. Central. If you're in the San Antonio area, we do live tapings once a month. If you're interested in, once a week. If you're interested in attending, you can hit us up and we can try to get you on a list. And once you passed all our proper protocols and whatnot. But shit, man, that's everything. We're all over the place. Heavy metal's everywhere, and we're taking over. And you can't stop me.
I love it, man. Heavy metal wrestling, San Antonio, Texas. Now that was a promo, Dylan Dunbar. You still got it, man. You still got it.
Right. I get dusted off every now and then, man.
All right, man. Hey, I appreciate you, man. I'll have you on again, all right?
Hell yeah. Thanks, AJ. Appreciate you, man.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening to that interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I sure did. I liked having Dylan on. Again, because I am not super tight with him. I haven't met him. I haven't been able to shake his hand. But we respect each other, and we have something in common. And so the conversation went real easy. So I just wanted to support Dylan because I think he's doing good things. If you want to support them, head over to www.heavymetalwrestling.com. Or if you want to type in Heavy Metal Wrestling in any of your social media platforms, you can follow them there as well. If you want to follow the podcast, writersandfighters.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Y'all keep listening. Stay tuned next week. We're going to shift gears a little bit. I got a writer coming on next week. Again, somebody I respect and admire, but don't know super well. I'm having Jennifer Mervin. Jennifer Mervin writes fiction, poetry, graphic storytelling, and other things. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out in about a week. You guys be good, be safe, take care.